One man changed the world twice. First, he made cars that almost everyone could buy. Then, another man made cars that run without a drop of gasoline. These two men never met. They lived 100 years apart, but they share the exact same obsession. They both looked at the world and said, "It does not have to be this way." Henry Ford saw horses on every street and thought, there must be something better. Elon Musk saw gas-powered cars choking the air and thought the exact same thing. Two men, two revolutions, one unstoppable idea. The world you live in right now, the roads you drive on, the Tesla you see at every red light, none of it exists without these two relentless, almost unreasonable men who refused to accept the world as it was. In 1908, a car cost more than most people earned in an entire year. Only rich people owned one. Regular workers, farmers, factory hands, they walked. They took horses. They stayed close to home because they had no other choice. The world was physically smaller for poor people. Your neighborhood was your whole life. Then Henry Ford did something that no one thought was possible. He made a car so cheap that his own factory workers could buy one. Think about that for a second. The people building the car could actually afford to drive it home. That single idea cracked open the modern world. It gave ordinary people freedom they had never felt before. Freedom to move, freedom to go farther. Freedom that used to belong only to the wealthy now belonged to everyone. And right now, in this exact moment in history, we are living through the second revolution. Electric cars are doing to gasoline what Ford did to the horse. They are replacing something old and broken with something cleaner, smarter, and faster. But here is the part that will genuinely surprise you. This revolution is not just about cars. It is about rockets. It is about artificial intelligence. It is about brain implants and robots, and a man who wants to put humans on Mars. The story of how we got here, from a factory in Detroit to a rocket launch in Texas, is one of the most dramatic stories ever told in business. And it all starts with a single, simple question. What happens when one stubborn person refuses to accept the limits that everyone else takes for granted? Henry Ford was born on a farm in Michigan in 1863. His family expected him to become a farmer, like everyone else around him. But Ford hated farming. He was obsessed with machines. As a young boy, he would take apart every clock and watch he could find just to understand how the pieces worked together. His father thought he was wasting time. The neighbors thought he was strange. But Ford kept going. He taught himself engineering. He moved to Detroit and got a job at an electric company. At night, in a small shed behind his house, he built his first engine from scratch. His wife held a candle so he could see what he was doing. It was past midnight. The neighbors were asleep. Ford did not care. He was already living inside a future that no one else could see. By 1903, Ford had started his own company. But his first few cars were not cheap. They were actually expensive. Racing cars, luxury vehicles. They sold, but only to wealthy buyers. Ford was frustrated. He had a bigger dream. He kept asking his engineers the same question over and over again. How do we make this cheaper? How do we make this simpler? The answer came slowly. you have to stop making each car as a unique individual object. You have to make every single part identical so that any part fits any car. This sounds obvious now. At the time, it was revolutionary. Before Ford, if a part broke, you had to wait for a craftsman to hand-make a replacement. Ford changed that. He made the same part 10,000 times. Identical, interchangeable. That simple idea was the foundation everything else was built on. Then came 1913, the moving assembly line. This single invention changed manufacturing forever. Before the assembly line, workers built a whole car in one place. They gathered all the parts, assembled everything by hand, then moved on to the next car. It took over 12 hours to build one vehicle. Ford flipped the whole idea around. Instead of workers moving to the car moves to the workers. Each person does one task and one task only. Tighten this bolt. Attach this wheel. Add this window. The car rolls past on a moving belt. By the time it reaches the end of the line, it is complete. 12 hours became 93 minutes. Ford did not just speed up production. He invented a new way of thinking about work itself. Every modern factory on Earth today owes something to what happened in that Detroit plant in 1913. The price of the Model T dropped year after year. In 1908, it cost $850. That was about 18 months of an average worker's pay. By 1925, Ford had pushed the price down to under $300. That was roughly 4 months of pay. For the first time in history, a working-class family could save up and buy a machine that gave them personal freedom. Roads started filling up with cars. Suburbs started growing because people could now live farther from work. Entire industries appeared out of nowhere. Gas stations, motels, roadside diners, traffic lights, parking lots. Every single one of those things exists because Ford made a car cheap enough for ordinary people to own. The economic ripple from that one innovation spread so wide and so deep that it reshaped American society from the ground up. But Ford was not just an engineer. He was also a businessman who understood something profound about economics. In 1914, he shocked the entire business world. He announced that Ford Motor Company would pay its workers a minimum wage of $5 a day. At that time, the standard wage was about $2.30. Ford was paying more than double the going rate. Business leaders were outraged. The newspapers called him a fool. Wall Street thought he had lost his mind. But Ford explained his logic clearly. If my workers cannot afford to buy my cars, who is going to buy them? He was turning his employees into customers. He was creating the thing we now call the middle class. A group of people who earn enough to consume, to spend, to buy products and drive an entire economy forward. Ford understood something that most business owners at that time completely missed. Workers are not just a cost. They are also the market. If you pay people poorly, they cannot afford to buy things. If they cannot buy things, businesses fail. If businesses fail, even the rich people eventually suffer. Ford's $5 day was not charity. It was a strategy. And it worked. Ford's sales exploded. His workers stayed longer, worked harder, and bought the cars they built. The logic seems simple now, but in 1914, it genuinely felt radical. Ford was essentially inventing the consumer economy. The idea that a healthy business depends on healthy customers. That you cannot squeeze workers dry and expect a thriving marketplace. 100 years later, that tension still sits at the heart of every conversation about wages, inequality, and economic growth. For the first 3 decades of the 20th century, Ford dominated. His cars filled the roads of America. His factory methods spread to every industry on Earth. From furniture to food to clothing, every mass-produced thing you buy today was shaped by the system Ford built. But Ford was also a deeply complicated man. He held views that were hateful and wrong. His politics were dark. He spread harmful ideas through a newspaper he owned. History does not give us heroes without shadows. Ford's genius was real. His accomplishments were enormous. And his failures as a human being were also real. We do not have to choose between these things. We can hold both. The greatest innovators in history are rarely saints. They are driven, obsessed, often difficult people whose ideas outlast their flaws and reshape the world, whether we like them or not. Now jump forward almost a century. The year is 1971. A baby is born in Pretoria, South Africa, to an engineer father and a model mother. His name is Elon. As a child, he is quiet, intense, and obsessed with books. He reads encyclopedias cover to cover. He finishes the entire library in his school. Other kids think he is weird. He gets bullied badly. At 12 years old, he sells his first computer game, a simple space game he coded himself, to a magazine for $500. He is 12 years old and already thinking about space, already thinking about technology, already running faster in his mind than the world around him can keep up with. The parallels to Ford are striking. The same childhood obsession. The same rejection of what others consider normal. The same burning need to understand how things work and then make them work better. Musk moved to Canada at 17 to avoid mandatory military service in South Africa. He scraped his way through university, working odd jobs and sleeping on the floor of his small apartment. He got into Stanford University for a PhD in energy physics. He lasted 2 days before dropping out. 2 days. He told himself he could always go back to school. But he could not go back to this moment in history. The internet was exploding. The world was changing in real time. Sitting in a classroom felt like watching a train leave without him. So he dropped everything and started a software company with his brother. It barely worked. They slept in the office. They showered at the local YMCA. It was unglamorous and exhausting, but it was theirs. And within 4 years, he sold that company for over $300 million. He was 27 years old. Here is the moment where this story completely changes direction. After selling his first company, Musk could have retired. He was 27 with more money than he could ever spend. Every smart financial advisor around him told him to invest it, diversify, play it safe. He did the exact opposite. He put almost every single dollar into two companies that most people thought were insane: a rocket company and an electric car company. Both industries had a brutal history of failure. No private rocket company had ever successfully reached orbit. Electric cars had been tried and abandoned multiple times. His friends begged him not to do it. One friend literally printed out a list of rocket failures to show him how bad the odds were. Musk read the list, paused, and said, "I know the risks. I just think the probability of success is higher than you do." This is the thing about truly transformational entrepreneurs that most people miss. They do not actually believe they are taking a crazy risk. They see a gap between what exists and what is possible, and to them the gap is obvious. Everyone else sees chaos. They see a map. Ford did not think making cheap cars was insane. He thought it was inevitable. Musk does not think putting humans on Mars is a fantasy. He thinks it is the only rational long-term plan for the survival of the human species. When you understand that these people genuinely believe in their vision at a level most of us never experience, their choices start to make sense. They are not reckless gamblers. They are people with such intense clarity about the future that present-day risks feel almost irrelevant by comparison. That is what makes them so hard to stop and so difficult to live with. SpaceX almost killed Musk before it ever reached orbit. The first 3 Falcon 1 rockets exploded. Each failure cost millions of dollars. By the third failure, Musk was nearly out of money. He had one rocket left, one shot. His team had worked for years on almost no sleep. Some were crying. Some had already started looking for new jobs. Musk stood in front of them and said simply, "We are going to keep going." The fourth rocket launched on September 28, 2008. It reached orbit. The room exploded. Grown engineers who had not cried in years were openly weeping. On that same day, Tesla was also nearly bankrupt. Musk later said that during that period, he was borrowing money from friends just to pay his rent. The richest entrepreneur on earth, borrowing money for rent. The gap between vision and reality can be brutally, almost comically, wide. Now think about what SpaceX has become since that night in 2008. By 2024, SpaceX was responsible for more than half of all the rockets launched into orbit on the entire planet. More than all other countries and companies combined. NASA pays SpaceX to carry astronauts to the International Space Station. The U.S. military pays SpaceX for satellite launches. Companies around the world pay SpaceX because it is simply the cheapest and most reliable option available. The Falcon Heavy rocket carries twice the payload of its closest competitor, while costing 1/3 the price. That is not a small improvement. That is the kind of cost reduction that reshapes an entire industry. Musk did to the rocket industry exactly what Ford did to the car industry a century earlier. He took something that only governments and billionaires could afford and made it dramatically cheaper and more accessible. But the even bigger prediction is this. What SpaceX is doing with rockets right now is just the beginning. Starship, the rocket currently being tested in Texas, is designed to carry 100 people to Mars. Not a few astronauts, 100 people at a time. Musk's stated goal is to make humanity a multi-planet species before something destroys Earth. He talks about asteroids, pandemics, artificial intelligence going wrong, nuclear war. He genuinely believes that having a backup civilization on Mars is not optional. It is survival. And here is what makes this more than science fiction. He is actually building it. The rocket exists. The tests are happening. The timeline is aggressive and probably too optimistic. But the technology is real, and the man funding it controls the most advanced private space company in human history. The Mars conversation is no longer only for philosophers and dreamers. Back on Earth, Tesla was also rewriting what a car company could be. When Musk invested in Tesla in 2004, electric cars had a reputation problem. They were slow, ugly, and had a range so short they were basically useless for any real journey. Tesla's first car, the Roadster, destroyed every one of those assumptions in one launch, 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds, a range of nearly 400 kilometers. And it looked like a sports car that rich people actually wanted to drive. This was the strategy. Start with something expensive and desirable. Use that to fund something cheaper and more practical. Then use that to fund something affordable for everyone. Ford did the exact same thing a century earlier. Start at the top of the market, prove the concept, then drive the price down until ordinary people can buy it. The playbook was the same, only the technology was different. The Model 3 was the moment Tesla proved the strategy worked. When it launched in 2017, it became the first affordable electric car that people actually wanted. Not just environmentally conscious people, everyone. The wait list was enormous. People put down deposits before they had even seen the car in person. It was stylish. It was fast. The interior had a single massive screen instead of 100 buttons. Over-the-air software updates meant the car could literally get better while you slept. New features would appear overnight. It was closer to owning a smartphone than owning a car. And that shift in thinking, from car as a machine to car as a connected software platform, is the single biggest transformation in the auto industry since Ford put the Model T on a moving assembly line. Tesla did not just build a better car. It reimagined what a car fundamentally is. Meanwhile, Ford, the original company, was watching all of this from Detroit with increasing alarm. The company that invented the affordable car for the masses was now scrambling to catch up to a startup founded 100 years after its own birth. By 2022, Ford had committed more than $50 billion to its electric vehicle program. $50 billion. That number tells you everything about how seriously the industry took the Tesla threat. Ford launched the F-150 Lightning, an electric version of America's best-selling truck, and announced aggressive targets for electrification across its entire lineup. General Motors and Chrysler had needed government bailouts during the 2008 financial crisis. Ford survived without one through restructuring and brutal cost-cutting. But surviving the Tesla era requires more than cuts. It requires a complete reinvention of what the company believes it is. While Tesla was redefining cars, Musk was simultaneously buying Twitter and turning it into something called X. This was not just a social media purchase. To understand why Musk bought Twitter, you have to understand his broader strategy. He needed a platform that generated real-time human conversation data at a massive global scale. His AI company, xAI, needed that data to train its artificial intelligence models. Grok, the AI chatbot that xAI built, is fed on live Twitter data. That gives it something most AI systems lack: up-to-date knowledge of what the world is actually saying right now. OpenAI, Google, and other competitors train their models on older data that is frozen at a specific point in time. Musk's model keeps learning from live conversations. The Twitter acquisition was not really about Twitter. It was about controlling a unique and irreplaceable data pipeline for the AI race. The AI race matters enormously because artificial intelligence is not just another technology. It is a tool that can accelerate every other technology. A better AI makes better rockets. A better AI makes better batteries. A better AI can help design drugs that cure cancer. A better AI can manage electricity grids that run on solar power. The company that controls the most powerful AI does not just win one industry, it potentially wins all of them at once. This is why the competition between Musk's xAI, OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and others is being watched so closely. And it is why Musk's lawsuit against OpenAI, which he helped found and then left, was so significant. He argued that OpenAI had betrayed its original mission to develop AI safely for all of humanity, and had instead become a private company focused on profit. In 2026, a court dismissed the case, but the questions it raised are not going away. Then there is Neuralink. This is the one that makes most people deeply uncomfortable. Neuralink is building a device that goes inside your brain. A small chip implanted through your skull that can read your thoughts and translate them into computer commands. The first human patient, implanted in early 2024, was able to control a computer cursor just by thinking about moving it. He played chess and browsed the internet using only his mind. Musk frames this as a way to help paralyzed people communicate and move again. That part is genuinely inspiring. But the long-term vision goes further. Musk believes that when AI becomes smarter than humans, the only way for people to keep up is to merge with the machine. Neuralink is his answer to that problem. Not a cure for paralysis. A survival strategy for the entire human species in a world run by artificial intelligence. In 2025, Musk stepped into a role no private business person had ever occupied. He became the head of the Department of Government Efficiency, a new government body created under the Trump administration with a stated goal of cutting $2 trillion from the U.S. government budget. He brought his own employees with him into government offices. He pushed for the shutdown of entire agencies. Some people celebrated this as long overdue accountability for a bloated government. Others called it an unprecedented conflict of interest because Musk's own companies receive billions in government contracts. The tension reached a breaking point in May 2025 when Musk resigned after a public falling out with the president over the very spending bill he had been brought in to reform. In a single week, Tesla's market value dropped by $150 billion. One disagreement between two powerful men, $150 billion gone. The episode revealed something important about Musk's entire empire. It is held together in part by government relationships. SpaceX launches NASA satellites. Tesla sells cars that qualified for federal tax credits. Tesla's carbon credit sales, which generated nearly $3 billion in a single year, depend on government emissions rules. When those rules changed under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, passed in 2025, that income stream was immediately threatened. An entrepreneur who builds a business that depends on government favor is always one political disagreement away from trouble. Ford learned this too, though in different ways. Every business that operates at massive scale eventually becomes entangled with the government that creates the rules they operate within. The question is whether you manage that relationship carefully or let it become your biggest vulnerability. So what do Ford and Musk actually have in common underneath all the noise? Both grew up feeling like outsiders. Both were obsessed with machines from childhood. Both had the same essential instinct that the thing everyone uses every day can be made dramatically better and dramatically cheaper. Ford looked at a world of horses and saw unnecessary suffering and limitation. Musk looked at a world of gasoline cars and saw the same thing. Both were willing to lose everything to prove their point. Both made enemies constantly because they were impossible to slow down. And both created economic ecosystems so large that entire cities, industries, and social classes were built around what they made. The entrepreneur who changes the world is not smarter than everyone else. They simply refuse to accept the gap between how things are and how they could be. The car you drive today is the direct descendant of everything these two men built. If Ford had not created mass production, there would be no affordable car market for Tesla to disrupt. If Musk had not forced the auto industry to take electric cars seriously, Ford and GM might have waited another decade to electrify. Every breakthrough stands on the shoulders of the one before it. The moving assembly line made the Model T possible. The Model T made the American middle class possible. The American middle class made the consumer economy possible. The consumer economy funded the technology companies that built the Internet. The Internet built the data infrastructure that now feeds the artificial intelligence systems that are about to change everything again. Every revolution enables the next one. The chain does not break. It accelerates. The next revolution is already happening in plain sight. Self-driving cars are being tested on real streets right now. Tesla's full self-driving software is being updated constantly. Waymo cars are operating without human drivers in major American cities. Within the next decade, the idea that you sit behind a steering wheel and manually control a machine traveling at highway speed will seem as strange as the idea of manually cranking a car engine by hand to start it. The jobs built around driving, trucking, delivery, taxi services will face enormous pressure. New jobs will appear that we cannot name yet. This is exactly what happened when Ford's assembly line replaced craftsmen. Short-term disruption, long-term expansion. The economy did not shrink, it transformed. And the people who understood the transformation earliest had the biggest advantage. Here is the single most important idea this entire story is trying to tell you. Every enormous change in how humans live begins with one person who sees a gap between what exists and what is possible. Ford saw it in 1903. Musk saw it in 2004. Someone else is seeing it right now in a garage or a dorm room or a small office somewhere in the world. They are looking at something everyone uses every day, something so normal and familiar that most people stopped questioning it years ago. And they are asking, what if this did not have to work this way? That question, asked with enough conviction and backed by enough relentless action, is the engine that has always moved civilization forward. It is not intelligence alone. It is the refusal to accept unnecessary limitations. The world rewards that refusal more generously than almost anything else you can offer it. 100 years from now, someone will make a video exactly like this one. They will look back at Elon Musk the way we look back at Henry Ford, a complicated, driven, sometimes maddening person who fundamentally changed how humans move through the world. And they will also be talking about the next person, the one who is right now sitting somewhere unremarkable, reading everything they can find, building something in their head that does not exist yet. The one who looked at rockets, or AI, or brain interfaces, or something we have not imagined yet, and said, "This is not good enough. I can make it better." That person is somewhere right now. They might be you. The gap between what the world is and what it could be has never been smaller, and the tools to close it have never been more powerful. The next revolution does not ask for permission. It just begins.